And Ms. Siebert, could you do the roll call?
Commissioner Glavin,
Present.
Commissioner Mullinex,
Present.
Commissioner Amerman,
Present.
Commissioner Flynn,
Present.
Commissioner Butler,
Present.
Chair Tyler,
Present.
Vice Chair Wolf. Sorry, I missed one. Vice Chair Amerman,
Still present.
sorry.
That's okay. No.
Commissioner
good.
Wolf,
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Lust, are there any late changes to the agenda?
No late changes, thank you.
Okay, then we will move into our first public comment period for the evening. Anyone requesting to speak to the commission may request to speak at this time. If you have not provided notice in advance to speak during the public comment period, please use the raise hand feature if you're on Zoom, and the clerk will send you permission to unmute your microphone so you're able to make your comments. For controls over the phone, press *9 for raise hand and press *6 to mute and unmute. Is there anybody online or in the audience is wishing to make a public comment at this time? If you wish to do so, you can come to the podium and state your name. And are we limiting it to 3 minutes for?
Yeah, comment is 3 minutes. On the top of the mic, there's a button. It'll turn from red to blue if it's on.
There you go.
Okay.
Hey,
Go ahead.
my name is Mello. Okay, I go by Mello. My name is Carmen De Leon, and I went to the city, Clark County, whatever, commissioner, Clark County up on 6th floor in Vancouver. Went to that this morning. I've been going to a lot of the meetings, and especially making me sick is the Vancouver wanting to put light rail in, because they want to put $2 billion light rail into something that doesn't even get 1,000 people a day. I mean, from my understanding is 450 round trip, and they want to justify light rail for that and destroy all kinds of land. It's sickening. And pardon me if I go over, but good ideas take more than 3 minutes. So I've been Googling Earth pretty much, and it's like this. You're driving up I-5. Oh, look, we're about to go through Portland, Oregon, the fentanyl capital of Oregon. Yay, drive through Oregon into Washington, What's Washington? Vancouver, a mini Portland filled with junkies, Part of the reason we came to Vancouver, my parents and me, is because it wasn't Portland, because it had that hometown feel. You still kind of have that here in Ridgefield. If you let Portland or Vancouver move in, it's going to look like a replica of downtown Portland, because if you go past Extra Short right now, they've destroyed downtown Vancouver, making it mini Portland. They want to move it out. They want to annex everything. So they want to come out here for sure. So I'm thinking, okay, you guys have $1 billion to burn? Wow, $2 billion, by the way, to get. So you're coming up I-5 and you see the Expo Center, the MAX cuts off. And they want to make the Expo Center MAX go over, or light rail, come over to downtown Vancouver to make a stop for $1 billion. And then one about a half a mile up the road for another $1 billion. Stupid, So I'm thinking here, there's a better way to get across the bridge. Expo Center is all, if you've seen it, parking lot. Okay, you want to come over to Vancouver without disrupting the river? They already did it in Portland. They do it in Salem. It's my favorite thing at the Salem Fail. I call it the people mover. They call it a tram. So everybody who works at OHSU, you park downstairs, get on the tram, go up to OHSU, work all day, come back down. $400 a year, and you get to go up and down the tram with that beautiful scenery for a minimal amount of money. But any tourist has to come and pay a full $9 full price. And if you cut it down to the annual price for them, it's about $1.50 a day, which is nothing to commute. So I say, okay, let's do that on the river. So you come up to Expo Center, you get on the tram, stops in Vancouver, okay, but then it comes up the Columbia River, looking at all the beautiful scenery up into Ridgefield. Here's your tourist money. Here's people who have no other thing in the world like it, to see two states from a bird's eye view of a tram, and you get to see the beautiful horizon of the sun coming up on Mount Hood, Mount St. Helens, and I've been to Ailani, and I'm looking how beautiful the mountain is and all of this, and that ugly box of a hotel. Oh, man.
Thank you. I'm going to have to cut your time.
I just want to say that instead of buses, think about a tram, because you want tourists, okay, I can wait for my next time, I can wait for more public opinion, I'll give you the rest of it.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Is there anybody else wishing to make a public comment at this time? Not seeing anybody, we'll close the first public comment period. Move on to the consent agenda. Has anyone had a chance to review the minutes of the last meeting? And if so, have any changes to be made? Okay, if we could get a motion.
Chair, I move to accept the minutes as presented.
Thank you. Any second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll now move on to the business for the Envision Ridgefield 2045, and I'll turn that time over to Ms. Lust.
Thank you, Chair Tyler, and good evening to the Commission and members of the public. This evening, we are going to be talking about the land use component of the 20-year comprehensive plan update. This is something Planning Commission has touched on a couple times now. We've looked at a few different versions of land use maps throughout later 2024 and earlier this year as well. So the first part of this presentation is going to be a little bit of background and then some information on how we are where we are now, which, not to bury the lead, City Council has a preferred land use alternative. They came to a consensus in a study session we had with them in March, and it's actually on their agenda as formal action tomorrow to basically put their stamp on that. So just to introduce that, they have formed pretty clear consensus around a preference, but I did want to get it before Planning Commission once more. It's similar to what you've seen before, just for an additional touch. And then we'll move into draft land use goals and policies. The format of that will look a lot like what you've seen previously for climate, housing, and economic development, drafting 5 goals with nested policies in those that complement and work with that land use map that would form the draft land use element of the comp plan. So with that, it's working, yeah. Oh, it says it is. So this is, again, just what we'll be going through this evening. This is information the Planning Commission, we've gone through, as I said, several times now, but just to get back to the framing of why we're talking about land use in Ridgefield and its urban growth area. We're required to provide 20-year land capacity for population and housing and jobs through this comprehensive plan update. And for the housing side in particular, not only are we required to plan for sort of gross housing capacity, but we are required, along with other jurisdictions, to plan to accommodate housing at different income levels through a combination of zoning and other regulatory tools like incentives. So our numbers for housing, we're required over the 20-year period to accommodate about 5,800 additional units, with the majority of those being affordable units defined as affordable to families making 80% or less of area median income, which is 100% AMI is about $114,000, so 80% about $92,000. Yeah, and generally, those affordable units are smaller units, including apartments and then middle housing, whereas the units affordable to greater than 80% AMI tend to be more single-family units. Of course, there are tools, incentives to sort of shift that picture around, but in general, that's the housing type split that we're looking at trying to achieve. All right, so I'm gonna, maybe? Next slide, please. All right, so this is where I'm gonna talk through some of the changes in mapping alternatives we've gone through to this point. Back in August of 2024, we provided two sort of initial draft land use maps to Clark County to include in their draft environmental impact statement process, basically their sort of baseline analysis of impacts that different land use scenarios would produce. And about a month after that, we had our community open house, which included that mapping activity that a couple of you participated in. And that's really when we got to ask the community through that open house and through the concurrent online mapping activity, okay, Ridgefield's gonna grow over the next 20 years. Where does it make sense for that growth to occur? And what came out of that exercise was a third land use alternative that has kind of been the strongest one throughout this process in terms of feedback we've received from the community, from Planning Commission, and from Council, which is a land use alternative showing some mixed use hubs throughout the city that would have higher density residential with direct access to amenities and services like commercial, parks and trails, strong road network, as well as some limited urban growth area expansion. So backing up to March of last year, the county put out a call basically for property owners and said, okay, if you are interested in petitioning for your property to be included in an urban growth area, the county has a process for that. So as we've gone through previously, there are several of those requests that came in that were adjacent to the existing Ridgefield urban growth area, or UGA. And so our position through the later portion of 2024, based on community planning commission and council input, is that those requests should be included in these studies. We should honor those property owners' requests, you know, not saying they'll all get brought in, but they should at least be studied. They are adjacent to the UGA, they're worth looking at. So that third alternative that was formed after the September-October community engagement sort of drew out two of those areas as focuses for potential expansion. One being the mall property, which is that 11.5 acre property in the southern portion of the city, well, outside of the city, but it's completely surrounded by city limits and UGA, so it's kind of an island. The other being the Northern Industrial Urban Reserve area, which is immediately between, to the east of Paradise Point, between that development and I-5, so bounded on three sides by urban land, characterized by urban development, and with an existing industrial reserve overlay. So that kind of brings us to earlier this year. Council had a study session on March 20th where our goal there was to get some more consensus from them, and ended up getting very clear consensus around a preferred land use alternative out of some combination of those options. So this is what we showed them during that session, sort of a descriptive comparison of the three alternatives. The couple slides after this will actually have the maps to pair with this. But basically the left column is what we called the maximum UGA expansion. That was the map that included all of those adjacent property owner requested expansion areas. The middle column, which they really coalesced around, which is not surprising to us based on the feedback we've received throughout this process, was the limited UGA expansion option. That's where we were showing them the mall property and the Northern Industrial area properties included in the UGA. And then the right column is something we put together for the study session, specifically, which was a no expansion option. And the reason, there's a reason we added that to the mix. And the reason was, back in December of 2024, County Council made a decision to include, amongst other cities' different alternatives, Ridgefield's maximum expansion and limited expansion options in their land use analysis. So because those both included expansions proposed, and because those expansions included property currently designated for agricultural uses, what was required through that county action was for the county to subsequently do what's called an area-wide resource lands analysis. Agricultural, mineral, forest, those are known as resource lands, and to be de-designated, which would happen if they were brought into a UGA, that has to be backed by evidence of an area-wide analysis of basically the state of those resource lands across the county. Now, we worked with property owners and asked them to provide site-specific resource lands analyses, which they did. Good data, but under GMA, the area-wide study needs to be done as well. So all that to say, in December, County Council made a decision to move forward with that resource lands analysis, which means that these expansions were still on the table. In March of this year, County Council, having had a little turnover at the start of the new year, gave direction to their staff to not move forward with that analysis. And our response to that was, well, if the county does not do this analysis, then we have to have an alternative in the mix that doesn't have any expansion. So we created that for council to consider. Basically, the effect of no expansion is more growth in the existing city limits. And what that looks like practically is more change to development patterns in existing neighborhoods. We had to up the assumption for redevelopment in existing neighborhoods, up the assumption for percentage of lots in existing neighborhoods that would have ADUs built on them. Again, this is thinking across the 20-year planning horizon, et cetera. So it's a really different future land use pattern than that sort of mix of mixed use hubs and limited expansion that there had been pretty positive feedback on so far. But nonetheless, we created that option for council's consideration during this work session. Ultimately, they sort of reaffirmed their preference for the limited expansion option, which they sort of saw as a targeted growth approach for the next 20 years. So, next slide. Thank you. This is just another way to cut the numbers and look at the differences between the three options. Again, the no expansion, an exercise to really see what no expansion would look like. It's still in our back pocket. Limited expansion is what the council preferred. And then the maximum expansion, keeping all those property owner requests on the table. The last time we talked about this, Planning Commission, I should have come back to this earlier, but Planning Commission brought up a really good point. I believe it was Commissioner Flynn that started the conversation, thank you, which is that that maximum expansion option, to make the numbers work, we had to make some frankly weird assumptions for the rest of the map. For example, we had to assume that properties in the existing urban growth area wouldn't annex. None of them would annex over the next 20 years, which A, isn't the purpose of a UGA, and B, some of them already are annexing. So it was kind of a bad faith argument to make the maps work, basically, and we shared that back to council, and they kind of saw the light there too as well, which is ultimately, I think, the driving reason why that maximum expansion didn't really hold up for them as a standalone option. So, Yeah. Next slide. Just to translate into map, this is City Council's preferred alternative. Area 2A is the mall property. Again, island surrounded by urban. Area 11 is that northern industrial urban reserve area, has the urban reserve overlay, surrounded on 3 sides by urban. And then in their March 20th discussion, Council did look at that maximum expansion map, and we asked them, are there any other of these property owner requests that really make sense to you? And they wanted to include Area 12 as well. The reason being, that is directly north of the future new elementary school site. And in the spirit of, creating neighborhoods with access to services, Council felt it would be good to include that as an expansion area for residential development adjacent to an elementary school site with really direct access. So the map before you is Council's preferred alternative. Just so you saw what they saw, I'll flip back in a sec, but the next slide, thanks Trina, shows the no expansion alternative that we put together and, like I said, still have in our back pocket, but it's not the front runner at this point in terms of what the vision is for development patterns in Ridgefield. A lot more change in existing neighborhoods is kind of the message there. So going back a slide, I'll just take a moment here to turn it back to you, commissioners. If you do have any remaining questions about this land use alternative, like I said, our council's pretty set on it. We've kind of been moving forward with work based on this, but they're not actually formalizing that decision with an action until their meeting tomorrow. So if you do have anything to add, any major concerns, this is kind of your opportunity to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lust. Do any of the commissioners have any thoughts or questions? Commissioner Wolf?
Just to make sure I understand, you talked about the county putting a stop on the agricultural evaluation. I believe, if I'm correct, that they later readdressed that and decided to actually go forward with that, which would
Yes.
make the preferred alternative doable if that
That is
proceeds.
correct. And thank you. I missed that chunk of the very convoluted timeline. So I had mentioned that in March, the county council directed their staff to pause moving forward with work on the resource land study. On April 15th, they held another meeting to get formal direction on that. The March meeting was a work session, so it was unclear as to whether that was formal action. Anyway, they came back together on April 15th, and at that point, reversed the decision again to move forward with the resource land study, focusing on ag land, so narrowing the scope a bit to make the timing a bit more feasible. But Commissioner Wolf, you're correct. That makes this land use alternative, it puts it back on the table as feasible because those expansion areas will have the study. Basically, we don't know what the outcome will be, but there will be a study that shows whether or not it is appropriate to bring those lands into the UGA. And we'll be able to work off of that. Thanks.
Any other thoughts or questions from the commissioners?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. The one thing that's been kind of a reoccurring discussion during this process, ever since kind of it was first introduced and actually kind of came up before then, is, and it's kind of getting back to the ultimate ask, one of the key asks being that Ridgefield must accommodate 4,136 new affordable units, less than 80% AMI, And definitely looking at these plans and not really trying to account the numbers, there's definitely an indication of, hey, we're in this time frame. Through this plan, we're adding a certain number of added affordable housing units. The topic that we brought up multiple times, and I know maybe me more than anyone else, has been that if we're accounting for that purely from the perspective of zoning to allow a certain density that could technically end up being affordable housing, the point that was made repeatedly was that that doesn't guarantee anything, and you could really argue that you can't really measure that as providing affordable housing when it doesn't have any ability to, not necessarily guarantee, but encourage more directly. And the idea was to, keep kind of pressing to look for options to provide more teeth. And I'm first off just curious, and I don't see anything here that really stands out to me, but I could easily be missing something. Would you describe anything that's been added through this process as providing more teeth than we had before?
Absolutely. So it kind of comes in two parts. The purpose of the land use map is to address the zoning part of it, which this map does. We work the numbers, we worked the assumptions for each of the zones shown on the map, so that this is showing we're basically within a pretty tight margin of error meeting our numbers for affordable units using this zoning. Like you said, the colors on the map don't guarantee that it gets built. It makes it possible. So the exercise for the map is to make it possible, which it does. The second part of that is housing policy. And in the draft we shared last meeting, we did have goals and policies around those incentives, monetary incentives, density bonuses, et cetera, for actually encouraging and or requiring provision of affordable units. And those goals and policies are still at a high level. The implementation is where we get into, okay, what are the actual programs we're doing? But at the policy level, it has that component of it has been addressed through those draft housing goals and policies, which we continue to refine, but it's in there.
Gotcha. And I wanted to kind of provide some, and again, I would even apologize for me making a big deal about this issue and then being so late to the game with anything to back up my question or intent. But I finally have, and while I didn't have it ready to share, by this meeting, I'm going to share it in the next week or so, but I wanted to at least throw some basic information out there just in case this is already in the ballpark of what's being discussed. But I specifically did some research on these type of efforts in Washington State in communities that were between 20 and 50,000 in population. And it seems like the times when there has been something successful done, almost in every case, it was a multifamily housing property tax exemption program that was put in place, and it always then got more complicated and had to do with the percentage of units that met that goal to get the tax exemption. I've also seen examples where there was, streamlined planning process and permitting process when certain things were being met. But I just wanted to kind of throw that out there because, again, this is just a big thing to me. I really feel like I just constantly see examples of things being made possible but not actually happening. But I'm excited to hear that things are in the works. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, thank you. That multifamily tax exemption program is definitely one that has come up, and is a really good example.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or comments from commissioners? Go ahead, Commissioner Flynn.
All right. I've got a few for you. Number one, before any questions, I would say that 80% of AMI is not affordable for a huge percentage of the folks that live here right now and a huge percentage of the folks that I imagine will be trying to move here in the next 20 years. So I guess a very broad stroke question or word of encouragement for the city, but also the city council is just to follow up on Commissioner Ammerman, how can we try and incentivize residential housing for folks that are at a lower percentage than 80%? Why? I mean, I know the state has that line, but can we have a line with a lower income level and aim to provide some percentage? I don't know what the right percentage is, but we can look into it. We, meaning not me. But there should be some target that the city has. We just 80% is far too high for a lot of people who are here right now. A lot of people who are here right now could never move to another place in Ridgefield because the values are just ridiculous compared to what they bought in at. So I would encourage the city to look into having a lower income level as some sort of a percentage that we target. I'm hoping, Ms. Luss, that you could, I'm looking at page 10 of our packet. It's the one that says assumptions. I don't know if you want to put that on the big screen for our
Sure, Trina, can you
home
go
viewers
back
and
two
folks in
slides?
attendance.
Yeah, that one, thank you.
I'm wondering, in the no UGA expansion, the second and third points there, the first one, the second one, but the first that I'm asking about says more mixing of affordable housing in RLD zones. And then below that, it says more mixing of affordable housing in RMD 16 zones. I'm wondering if you could expand a little bit on the housing. When I just look at this in 2 seconds, it says to me that this no expansion option gives us more affordable housing. And I'm wondering if you could just break that down a little bit more for me.
Absolutely. So the no expansion option, I'll go back a half step. All three of these options we balanced out so each of them provides the same level, same number of affordable units, of course, theoretically based on zoning assumptions,
Right.
For each of these three columns. The where they are changes. The to max UGA expansion, limited UGA expansion, that includes more affordable units in that northern industrial urban reserve area, which is envisioned as a pretty large mixed-use hub. So there's a big number, like something around 1,000 medium to high density units in that mixed use hub. So mathematically that shifts a lot of them to a mixed use area. Without that expansion, more of them are, those units have to go somewhere else. So we upped the assumptions for like the percentage of existing RLD4 neighborhoods that would redevelop over the next 20 years with higher density units. So it's not, the no expansion alternative doesn't provide more affordable housing overall. It's level across the options. It just changes where you see it. It relies less on those mixed use hubs and more on changes to existing neighborhoods. If that makes sense.
It does for sure, and I guess I would say the next slide down where I think you're addressing that. The no expansion, bottom two rows there, redevelopment percentage and percent of residual parcels with ADUs. So friendly jabbing here, but those feel like percentages that are sort of just plugged in. I mean, I don't know what we have averaged, and I don't know if you could go back over 20 years and say it's a realistic comparison to the next 20 years, but 30% of residual parcels with ADUs feels like an unrealistically high percentage. And so it feels like it's a number or a percentage that's being plugged in to sort of try and get to that normalization of affordable housing across all three options here.
Yeah, so without the expansion, we did have to increase those assumptions pretty significantly in existing neighborhoods to get to numbers that work. They're high, they're not out of nowhere. They're based on existing code provisions that do allow for middle housing in our low density neighborhoods at a certain percentage. Have we achieved those percentages? No, but they were able to feed into an assumption of higher redevelopment and higher ADU.
But sort of the last cell on the spreadsheet that got filled in was, I mean, is that sort of how that number was developed, the 30%? Just we needed to have 30% there in order to clear enough affordable housing?
I don't know if it was the last cell on the spreadsheet, but yeah, if you say there's zero expansion, it does limit your options as to where. And when you turn the knob up as far as you can go reasonably in those mixed use hubs, downtown and waterfront, and there's still a deficit,
then we have to hope that we're going to be able to get to 30%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to assume something that is that high. Could I have come before you and said 70% with a straight face? No. I think 30% is still within the straight face range, but you're right, it is high. And that is because there are limited other options.
Yeah. I'm inclined to like the hub idea anyway. I think that's a lot better solution. And we've had conversations about that going back over a year, I think. So I'm okay with that, although I am interested in knowing what the city policy would be then for ADUs, especially in the downtown area. I believe there's a lot of people who are interested in having them. So I'm not sure how this would impact any existing policy on that. I don't need to know all the details, but I think that is something that we should keep in place.
Absolutely. And there's actually new 2023 new legislation that will be required to implement by end of 2026, I believe, around ADUs, where our zoning code, we will have to make some updates that are more friendly to ADUs in residential zones. So that'll come back to Planning Commission as part of a future code update.
Okay. Lastly, perhaps. Yes. Lastly, I just want to say that, when we met about this, whenever that was, February, maybe, and I said I had a snarky comment about, we didn't want a tire burning factory across the street from the new elementary school. And so I'm just very appreciative that in the session that the city council had, and the information provided and recommendations provided from the city staff, I think it's very important that parcel 12 be included in this preferred plan, just because that is the elementary school. We need to have, I feel, as a city, a little more control over what goes in there. So I'm very appreciative of that, snarkiness aside. Thank you, Ms. Lust.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions from the commissioners? Go ahead.
I just wanted to follow up again because I opened up my mouth. One thing I did find out, because I'm very, very sensitive to the point on the kind of, it seems like a key number is 60%, and then there's a couple notches below that on the affordable scale. And from my research, one thing I did notice is there were success stories that got all the way down to 30%, if you can believe that. But in every case I found, and again, I'm not suggesting any kind of exhaustive and professional grade search, they were all partner developments, meaning that it was some kind of a nonprofit or a housing development authority. It was in every case, or sometimes it was literally just the city doing it. And I'm just sharing this to kind of frame in that it seems like, at least so far via the successes I have been able to identify, it's pretty reasonable to get a certain target that's 80% or below. It gets a lot more difficult to get that much below that. And that doesn't change how important I think it is to reach those goals and to strive for them, even codify the intent to try and find ways to do it. But I kind of get this feeling that an unfortunate reality of our size is that unless there's something in our area that's not about Ridgefield, maybe there's something in the context of Clark County, and I know there is a Clark County Housing Authority, there might be a partnership possibility there, but if you do not consider anything like that, at the size we are, I can accept that we're limited in going beyond the kind of things that we were talking about, like the tax exemption and other incentives. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Yeah, and if I may, add a little bit more context. In our implementation of the comp plan, we will be required to track not just broadly 0 to 80, but actually broken down to 0 to 30, 30 to 50, 50 to 80 in terms of affordability. And to your point, the strategies for those different smaller breakdowns of income levels and affordability are very different. 80% you can achieve through the market for apartments, barely. Lower than that, you're correct. It takes other strategies, and it takes partnerships, and it takes more regional work. It takes more looking at incentive programs like the multifamily tax exemption. So all that to say, correct, and yes, in our work as staff, we absolutely acknowledge that there are different strategies for those different income levels, and that's going to be an important part of our implementation.
Thank you. Any other comments or thoughts on this section? Turn the time back to Ms. List.
Great, so now we're going to move on to the draft land use goals and policies. This is our first touch at it, so any feedback is welcome. There are 5 goals, so we'll start with 1.1, which is really sort of most basic one. It is around land supply for different uses. So goal 1.1, provide an adequate supply of land designated for residential, commercial, employment, recreational, and other purposes to meet the needs of the community, accommodate a variety of housing options, and provide jobs and economic activity to support the local workforce. And as we go through this, the policies with the little tree icons are ones we have identified that could be cross-referenced to the climate element, which we talked about last time, really is something that it's not a standalone. It's its own chapter for the purposes of the plan, but it really ties into land use, housing, transportation. So when you see the icons, that's the connection there. So I'll turn it back for any questions or feedback on 1.1.
Thank you, Ms. Lust. Any comments or thoughts on goal 1.1? Not seeing any. Nope.
I actually have one thing. I don't know if this is where it would go, and I don't want to steal someone's thunder, but is this a section where we could put some stronger language about, in the context of development activity, a requirement for nothing but native plants? Or am I jumping the gun and there might be a more appropriate section?
I'm going to jot it down, and we'll think about where it would best fit.
Yeah, that's good enough. Thank you.
If there's nothing else, we'll move on to 1.2. Next slide, please. So 1.2 moves on to basically, I would sum this one up as property rights, creating clear and objective standards for what can and cannot be done with different properties in different zones, balancing those rights and needs of property owners with public policy in our land use planning moving forward. So this one does kind of start to tie in the plan to you can see the connection there to the development code pretty clearly in this one. Any thoughts?
Any thoughts or comments on goal 1.2? Not seeing any. Go on to 1.3.
The next slide is 1.3. This one's all about integration of land use and infrastructure. Really, this is a key part of planning in our day-to-day work as we do development review, is working really closely between our planning and our public works teams to make sure land uses and infrastructure availability align. So that's what these policies center around. And infrastructure includes a lot of things. It's not just transportation, it's schools, parks, trails, etc.
Any thoughts or comments on goal 1.3? Back to you.
You guys are storming through. All right. 1.4 is kind of summed up through themes of vibrancy and connection, create vibrant and well-connected neighborhoods that offer a diverse mix of housing and are designed to enhance pedestrian safety and promote a high quality of life for all residents. So this is policies kind of trying to get at how it feels to live in neighborhoods in Ridgefield. Back to you.
I do have, sorry, a small question about this because it talks about like the integrated trails and everything like that. Who has authority over like those kind of things? Like, is that the actual city? Like,
It's a mix of public and private. So the city has a Parks and Trails capital facility plan that shows sort of general alignment of parks and trails. So when a development comes in that has a trail alignment in or near it, we can require them to build that segment of it. They become eligible for park impact fee credits. So there's kind of a balance there in terms of funding. And then we also, through our planned unit development standards, require residential developments to also integrate private parks and trails. So those are built by the developer and then turned over to the HOA. So it is a mix of public and private that we work with our parks team as well as public works to make sure those are working together.
okay. I that one's just curious to me because the community I live in was supposed to have some trails. The developer completely didn't do that. So I was just curious on how that's implemented in here and who's like has authority over that. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments on goal 1.4?
Yes, I do, and actually it's in the same vein. I was hunting for this and found it here. On that same vein of trails, might not be surprising to a couple people here, my concern is that while this completely addresses it, and I love the language here until you start to pick it apart and look at some of our experiences as a community and a developing community, I'm wondering if this would be an appropriate place, or at least I want to reiterate the desire to be more clear, structured, and again, maybe even kind of put teeth when it comes to trails. And what I mean by that is in the context of, let's say a new development is going in that is going to basically be between the path of a major trail that exists in one neighborhood, it exists in the other, and the whole idea with any trail that we can, but especially with key trails like the one that follows G Creek and some others, we want them to continue. The whole idea is to be able to walk on these trails or ride a bike on these trails from one end of Ridgefield to the other wherever possible, but unless that we have a hard requirement when someone's going to develop a property that says, you are taking on this responsibility not just to try and have trails, but you are interfacing with two ends of a trail and you need to continue it through your development. I'm just wondering if this would be a place where we can at least put in a few words, if not expand that into its own sentence to, again, be more clear and specific and to a higher degree of trying to specify that. I've heard language through other entities and whatnot of that this is what we want to do, this is what we intend, maybe it's even codified in a few places, but I'm just concerned about making it consistent throughout our policy and goals and other documents.
Yeah, we can certainly look at ways to strengthen the language here. And then this will connect into the Parks and Recreation element, which has its own goals and policies. And then our Parks and Trails development standards, our parks manager has actually been working this year and last on a really big update to those, which if you are interested, I believe is going before council tomorrow. So a lot of the meat is in there, really bringing us up to snuff, so.
Any other thoughts and comments on goal 1.4? Yeah, back to you, Ms. Lust.
All right, finally, 1.5. This one is similarly about identity and sense of place, but it does lean more into the non-residential or commercial side of development. So promote community identity and enhance compatibility to foster a sense of place and connection in Ridgefield. So here we have policies around commercial uses, including those development standards for how they're built out, access to commercial uses, and then specific policies pointing to downtown and the waterfront as well.
Any thoughts or comments on goal 1.5? Commissioner Wolf? Did you have?
I'd like to go back to one, so if we want to finish with 1.5 and then have something else.
Anything on 1.5? Go ahead.
If I was to go back to 1.3, and maybe a suggestion might be on policy 1.3.6, that seems related perhaps to climate as well, so maybe an icon. And I know we touched on this earlier, so I was glad to see this language in here. And then I have a more generic question, and I'm thinking back to our discussions in Carty Road sub-area plan, and perhaps folks can help refresh my memory. Seems like there was a lot of concern regarding the infrastructure of transportation to be able to support that development. And is there anything in here that would speak to that? It talks about transportation being close to mixed-use hubs, et cetera, but is there anything that can be or should be in here in regards to just the adequacy of the road infrastructure to support neighboring developments in general?
Yeah, we can look for a place in here to strengthen that language, and then similar to the trails questions, the stronger and more detailed goals and policies around that will be in the transportation element.
Thanks.
Any other thoughts or questions on the goals in general? Please, Commissioner Butler.
Goals in general. No, I just wanted to say thank you. The language in here is very considerate of the discussions and public comment that we've received, taking into account property owners' rights. And so I appreciate that it is documented in here and it is in a policy. But yes, just every policy point is just very well thought out. And so I appreciate the work that your team did with this.
Any additional thoughts or comments? Anything else on this item, Ms. Lust?
Nothing else. Thank you so much for your feedback this evening. We'll take this back and work with our team to refine based on some of your comments.
And thank you very much for the presentation. We'll now go to the second public comment period of the evening. Anyone requesting to speak to the commission may request to speak at this time. If you have not provided notice in advance to speak during the public comment period, please use the raise hand feature if you're on Zoom, and the clerk will send you permission to unmute your microphone so you're able to make your comments. For controls over the phone, press *9 for raise hand or press *6 to mute and unmute. And of course, if you're in an audience, you may come to the podium if you would like to make a comment. Again, please limit comments to 3 minutes. Anyone wishing to make a public comment at this time?
Yeah, I'm back. So anyways, I was just going to finish saying, everybody goes to Seattle for the Space Needle. What are they selling you? It's not shaped like a needle. It's a saucer. They're selling you the view. They designated 5,000 acres for the view here. We have beautiful trees all over. Look at the trees. I mean, it's the Great Northwest, what is it, the Evergreen State. So the end of what I was trying to say is that if you build a tram and you see that ugly box building, to see and to compete with their damn Space Needle is to make a tree. And in the tree, the tram would come and turn around and go back, and the canopy of the tree would be for kids, because the Space Needle underneath, if you've been to the Space Needle, you know there's a children's museum. And that's where they get the families coming in, pay, oh, you want to go up and see $30 to go look around? Look at the Space Needle. We can do the same with a tree. You want to go up the tree? Okay, what fun. Let's go up in the tree. Let's go look at the view. And the tram has a see-through floor. So you're literally floating over the Columbia River, floating over wherever the beautiful scenery you guys have. You just talked about not screwing up the land. How about we build something to appreciate the land so that people can come from across country and say, we're going to look at 5,000 acres of beautiful trees coming from a tree. So, and here's the thing. You guys close it down. There's my minutes. Okay. How do you keep it in business to finance itself when it's not, slow times? You have all of Clark County, and every school gets a discount from the fee to come ride the new tram, look at the beautiful scenery of the Northwest, appreciate it, and guess what? You can climb the tree for a fee. You can swing under our tree. You can play in our treehouse. We're getting the families in. The schools have a discount to bring in hundreds of kids Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you've got business all year because of the schools. And at the end of the year, you have a competition. Whoever climbs a tree the fastest gets a prize. So you're making the whole Clark County school system want upper body strength to give your kids physical education, which we have an obesity problem in this nation. So to get the finances of not all the time tourists are going to pack it, the school kids will. And at the end of the school year, you win a trophy shaped like a tree. I'm just saying that's how you finance it on the off season with your own kids, because we have no children's museum. It's shut down in Oregon. Portland doesn't have it anymore. We don't have one in Vancouver, Washington. See, I'm telling you, this is to compete directly with the Space Needle. We don't want a Space Needle shaped like a flying saucer. We want a tree, and you can climb our tree, and you can fly out like a bird and look at the beautiful scenery underneath, because, they remodeled the Space Needle to make the whole floor see-through. Why can't we?
Catch up.
Am I done?
Yeah, you got 3 minutes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Anyone else wishing to make a public comment at this time? Anyone on the phone or on Zoom? Not seeing anybody, so we'll close the public comment period. Go to staff reports.
Thank you, Chair. I have a quick list of things to update the Planning Commission on. First of all, to follow up on some of our recent agenda items. We are continuing to refine those climate, housing, and economic development goals and policies, so ongoing work there. You reviewed the proposed Royal Ridge mixed-use overlay, end of last year. That's the one just north of Rose Hours. And Council did just recently end up approving that mixed-use overlay expansion with a concomitant rezone agreement to require 10% of the units to be affordable to 80% or less, half of those to 60% or less area median income. There are a couple other provisions in that concomitant rezone. I think the other one, probably most interesting to this group, is that they will be completing a trail connection across the pretty large creek/draw that runs through the northeast corner of that site, and that is important because it'll provide future access to what will be the rec center site from that community across the creek. So pretty exciting there in terms of a little bigger picture outside of the development itself. The other mixed use overlay expansion you looked at recently was Legacy Trails 3, just south of Legacy Trails Apartments. That went to public hearing at council, and they are seeking a concomitant rezone agreement on that one too with similar provisions for affordable housing. So we're working with the applicant through the details on that now before council takes action. Commissioner Wolf mentioned the discussion around just infrastructure to support traffic on Carty Road as the areas around there develop. And we have been working with the property owners and their representatives, future developers for properties that have annexed along that corridor, and are working with them to put together a funding strategy for coordinated infrastructure improvements along that corridor. So there is a plan in place before any developments in there start actually getting approved, that we can show that those improvements are reasonably funded through the corridor. Let's see, the last thing on my list is you've all seen emails about this year's city tour. Coordinating between Council, Planning Commission, and Parks Board is pretty tough, but I think we are going to do that July 1 date. So save the date, and we're working on the programming for that, but I think what it's going to look like is basically a real life tour of that preferred land use alternative, and with, in those areas, kind of talking through some of the land use, housing, transportation policies that could come to fruition in different areas of the city. So should be fun. I know not every single one of you can make it, but that's where we're at. So for those of you that can, looking forward to that on July 1st. More details to follow. That is all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Lust. We'll move to reports from commissioners. Let's start this in with Commissioner Butler. Sorry, caught you mid-yawn.
Thank you, Director Lust and Ms. Seaver, for today's meeting and preparation of it, and to members of the community who are here in person and online. I wanted to first say, yay, congratulations on the opening of Pioneer Road. I think as a resident of the east side that travels that road almost Monday through Friday, I'm really glad that it's open. However, I think one piece of feedback that I would give is I was used to the 2 lanes traveling from east to west, both having access to continue traveling west, and now just the left lane can go. And I know that the sign is there, but it would be helpful if it was maybe further back for people that are driving into town from the freeway, or even residents further east side, because it does not give you enough time, especially during rush hour. It does not give you enough time to, if you're in the right lane, to merge over to the left and to the left lane, so you can continue driving west into town. So that's one piece of feedback that I've personally experienced, and had to go through the Costco roundabout and then back through the main roundabout and then back west. So, and also celebrating the 10th anniversary of First Saturdays. I think that was really awesome, and it's just so nice to see the community, especially on when the weather is nice, to have the community out and enjoying all of the things and all the partnerships that the city of Ridgefield has to offer to our residents, and get exposure to some of the things that some people may not know about. So that was wonderful. I'd also like to, if anybody is interested in art, the Ridgefield School District has an art show tomorrow from 5:30 to 7:30. It is drop-in, so you can feel free to stop by, but art will be on display from kindergarten through 12th grade, and it's always nice to see younger kids' artwork, and then it's just so amazing. I am not an artist, so it is always amazing to see the talent that some of our students have. That'll be at the Performing Arts Center. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Butler. Commissioner Glavin?
Not much to share, just thank you for the hard work on the update.
Thank you. Commissioner Ammerman?
Sure, a couple things. First, I actually want to apologize. I was absolutely all in and actually quite excited about participating in the State of the City some number of Tuesdays ago, and even believe I committed to being there with all intent, and then my life got away from me. bottom line is I've got a lot of balls in the air at the moment. The company I work for is in the process of being acquired by one of the biggest companies of its kind in the world, if not the biggest. And yeah, there's just a lot going on. So I apologize for that, and I hope that went well. And I didn't even get to go to that event. Also, just to kind of follow up, since I've kind of taken you on a little bit of a journey, the season for the high school robotics team that I'm a mentor for finished off with the final event being the district's championships in Cheney, where while we were hopeful for a better showing and going into that event, we were arguably still on track to possibly go to Worlds down in Texas. But that fairly quickly moved out of our grasp, and that didn't happen. But what was kind of clear is that the district championships was such an incredible event. Everything was taken up a notch. The amount of highlighting of key aspects of what's going on and the impact that this program, First Robotics, has on these kids is highlighted throughout the entire event. The mentorship process is highlighted. It's just was very, very moving. I mean, I was just unprepared for how big of a deal it was. And we did do extremely well. It was so exciting to see these kids participate in that. And even the process of driving them in a van there and back was even extremely satisfying. So I really felt that whole process of being on the team rewarding, and just could not say enough about these kids. Another point I wanted to throw out there is that, what was I thinking of? Oh yeah, no, I lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. I do have something else. And again, I do want to extend my thanks to the staff. Everything was really well prepared tonight, and I'm really excited about where we're going with the comprehensive plan, and I feel that things are moving along really well. And I'm excited about where the City Council went with their latest kind of view and what they're favoring, especially after some of the turmoil we represented in trying to analyze things a couple months ago. So I'm pretty happy with where things are going. So, I did want to add one thing. I'm hoping if anyone else was able to make the High School Musical Batilda, that I just wanted to express how impressed I am. It's not the first musical I've been at the high school, but it's another example of kids exceeding expectations. And I'm a musician myself. I'm in a professional vocal group and have done things throughout my life, and was supposed to be a music teacher, and I was still blown away. I was not prepared for how well they did. And it wasn't just a couple people shining above everyone else. It was a very large number of kids that were just doing an incredible job, and even the thoughtful set design really stood out. So it was an incredible thing. So I really appreciate seeing what our kids do in Ridgefield. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Armerman. Commissioner Flynn?
Thank you, Chair. First, I just want to say that I'm very excited about the city tour coming up for the new commissioners. If you haven't done that before, then I highly, highly encourage you to attend. It is a lot of fun. And by the end of it, Steve Stewart loses his voice because he's talking so much, giving a tour of every nook and cranny of the town. So that's kind of fun too. Just to echo what Commissioner Butler said, the art show every year is fabulous. And these kids are so talented. It is a blast to go and see what they do, all different mediums. And I have zero art talent as well, so it's just fascinating to watch. And I'll also piggyback on her talk about traffic. Pioneer is open. It's not open, but it's partially open, better than nothing. And it's pretty incredible to see how quickly that actually happened. It felt like it took a long time, maybe after about 2 weeks, but then you could see it coming together. And now I'm not 100% sure what it's going to look like in a month or two, but it's pretty exciting. On the traffic front, though, I brought it up before. I would love to get the speed limit downtown lowered from 25 to, 20 or 15. It seems too fast. And yes, I'm putting on my grumpy old man hat, but it is way too dangerous at 25. And then also, if you're turning up from Pioneer up Hillhurst, it's 25 there until you get up to the Methodist Church there. But the sign, the 25-mile-an-hour sign going up Hillhurst, is smaller than my hand. I mean, it is super tiny, and there's not really city property there. I don't think it's all private, so there's might be some issues with putting a new sign in or a bigger sign, but it is super small, and I'd prefer to have glowing lights telling people to slow down right there. Not really on the lights, but people need to slow down there. Prom is this Saturday, and I just think that's fun. And summer's around the corner, so I think In-N-Out is opening in the middle of June, like the 19th-ish.
We don't have a date yet.
The internet told me the 19th. Is that true? Yes.
No.
No, okay. Are there any other businesses that we should be aware of that are exciting to share at this time?
Well, I don't know what your definition of exciting is, but Starbucks and Chipotle are both really close to getting their doors open. They're on finishing touches. In-N-Out, like I said, we don't have a date. Not 4th of July weekend, I can tell you that. Would be pure chaos. Gosh, what else? I don't think we have any, like, publicly knowable other ones in that complex.
Do you want to break any news right now for anything that's exciting that's not public?
I honestly can't even think of any.
Okay.
We have, most of those buildings are being built as shells, and tenants are TBD.
Yeah. Okay.
But
well,
there are a lot of them, so.
even though you're not breaking news, I do want to say thanks to you and the staff for putting together today for us, and thanks to the members of the public for coming. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Flynn. Commissioner Mullinex?
I apologize. I'm losing my voice from all the pollen. Thank you for everything you put forward today and every month. I wanted to touch on again that the first Saturday festival was very well put together. I know that there was a couple things that went on that were very well handled and taken care of, as well as there were a lot of people out. It was good to see that gravel lot kind of open for help reduce parking issues. I agree that the traffic flow through there was very fast, and I second the look at that. Again, I apologize. And then on the In-N-Out, I would appreciate an invite to the ribbon cutting of the In-N-Out, because we know that nobody's going to get in there for the first, whatever weekend that is. But that's all I really have. Thanks for everyone that, is keeping those events going and keeping people doing stuff. I encourage everyone to go. We did the what do you call it? Scavenger hunt, and that was a lot of fun. And I feel like not enough people took advantage of that, and a lot of people missed out. So, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Mullinex. Commissioner Wolf?
If I'm correct, the Ridgefield Neighborhood Association meeting is coming up.
The Ridgefield Junction Neighborhood Association, which is mostly a neighborhood of businesses versus like a typical neighborhood association, is in May. I believe it's typically during the 3rd week of May. I don't have the date off the top of my head, but you're correct that it is coming up shortly. They usually meet at Dollar Tree.
Correct.
Over on the east side, correct? Yeah.
So I just encourage folks to attend. I found it to be very informative, and I know that the city has a spot on there, and so do we know what the city will be covering?
I'm not sure, but yes, you're correct. At least one person from the city is always there to give some updates and talk, as well as a lot of our partners and folks from the business community.
And then I have a question. This is something that I listened to that the council discussed several months ago, but it was talking about installation of bird art at the freeway, and I haven't heard anything more about that. Do you know a timeline?
Yeah, so there are 2 bird arts, one on the overpass over the train tracks, which was installed last week. So if you walk or drive down there, you'll be able to see it. And then the next step is installing similar art on the freeway overpass that'll be visible as you're like on the freeway looking at the overpass. I don't remember the date for that, but soon. My understanding was that when they finished that overpass art, they'd start on that overpass art. So forthcoming, but if you want to check out what's already been installed, the stuff downtown is pretty neat.
Okay, and thanks for the information provided today. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Wolf. I don't really have much to add personally, just another thank you for Ms. Lust and Ms. Siebert for being here tonight, and for all that you do to prepare for our meetings, as well as staff behind the scenes that we don't see. So huge thank you to all of you, and thank you to the public who's here in person and on Zoom to participate in our meetings. Always appreciate that. So with that, I think we'll adjourn.
I have one more.
No.
Sorry. I just wanted, I've been meaning to follow up for some time on this, just out of curiosity, and because it was discussed here, I just kind of feel like it's appropriate. Some months ago, I don't even know if I was the one that brought it up, but the newest building in the development with Starbucks, I forget the name of it, the one that has the UPS store in it. And it seemed to have fallen through a crack or failed when it came to design standards, and you indicated at the time that it was still being dealt with in some form, and not a guarantee of how or if it was going to be rectified, just that at the time it was a known issue, and the issue was in some machinations. And I was just curious about a follow-up to find out what actually did happen there. That's it.
I'll have to go back to that project and get you some more information.
Thank you all, and we will adjourn at this time.